Okay, let's get the show on the road and let me fix my screen. So, good evening, everyone. I'm joining you from Flagstaff, Arizona, and right now it's snowing, so it's really pretty outside. My name is Jacqueline Salabai, ki ani nishla touching ibashishtin, tabaha edishichedo, turijini edishanella, kutazan shwan. So, I am originally from the Lower Greasewood, Arizona area, and I grew up in the border town of Winslow, Arizona. I went to school at Winslow High School and lived in Flagstaff, Arizona for almost 21 years. So I've been here for a while. Um, just a little bit of information about today. We're going to be working through the chat, and I know we've been using Mentimeter in the past, and I know it kind of is difficult sometimes when we have a large group. Some people can't access the codes and it gets kind of funky. And so today we're going to use the chat. And so I really appreciate if you want to get off mute and you want to talk and introduce yourself, that would be great too. But for right now, I'd like you to put your information in the chat. Just put your name, your clan, your tribe, and what college you go to. And we can put that in there. Also, your current location. That way, we have a gist of who is where and who's going to school where. That's always good. I like to do that for building connections and to see who our relatives are out there and also to build relationships. I know some of you are going into similar programs and maybe some of you are online and some of us are in person at universities or colleges. So it's easy to connect through here. I'm going to get my PowerPoint up. So go ahead and keep those coming while I get the, so first off, I would like to go through a recap of last session. What did we learn last session and what did we do last session? And if you were here last session, I really would like it if you would come off mute maybe and share some information about what you learned. If someone would like to do that, that would be great. Clanship connections, we did that, a little discussion, a little bit of introductions. Guidelines to remember, we talked about how to create safe spaces and what that looks like to each and every one of us. And then we're going to talk a little bit about what we face each day, because each and every one of us has something that's going on in our lives, right? Good and bad. And I like to talk about, unloading some of those bad things that you are dealing with currently. And one of the guidelines that I like to put in all of our meetings is that whatever is said here it stays here. It stays in the room. So, like when you go to Vegas, what happens in Vegas stays in Vegas. So what happens here stays here, right? Unless you're a harm to yourself or others, and then that's when it calls for intervention, okay? Then we'll talk about how do we cope with these things, because we're unloading this information, right? But we need to do something about it. So how do we cope with it? And then we're going to talk a little bit about resiliency, and we're going to share some strengths, and then we're going to talk about who are you and what do you carry with you. And then we'll talk about you are worthy. I might go into you are worthy a little bit sooner, so that might come after the guidelines to remember. So if anyone was here last week, does anybody want to share what they learned? If anyone wants to come off mute.
Hi. So
Hi.
what stick with Hi, sorry about that. So what stuck with me on the last session was like no matter where we're from, whether it's from a tribe down east or somewhere on the west coast, we're all one. We all come together, and it doesn't matter. We should, welcome one another and take care of one another, even though we're not from the same tribe.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. Thank you. That's Andrea, right? Thank you for sharing that. It's really important to understand that, we as Indigenous peoples, we need to band together, first off. I know there's a lot of, toxicity sometimes in different communities and different agencies, different organizations, but it's really important that we see the positives and the strengths when we're working in these different situations, right? And I really focus on the strengths of each one of us. And when I go into different situations, that's kind of what I do as a social worker. I've been a social worker for 15 years. So that is near and dear to what I've been taught. But culturally, you're supposed to give respect to anyone that you're working with, right? Whether you're a child or a peer or an elder, right? So having those teachings when you're growing up really helps to, what's the word? Helps you to remain resilient and helps you to overcome things, but it helps you to learn how to work together. And that's really crucial in our lives, especially as Indigenous populations. And so I say that in coming together and banding together and getting to know each one of you and getting to know each other, because sometimes down in the future, you're going to come across at least one person, right? Whether it's at a conference or a symposium or a powwow, or way in the future, you might work together, right? And so it's really important that you start building these connections and networking and starting to share that information and coming from that perspective, like Andrea was talking about. Let's see. And so last week we went over, what is mental health? We talked about the importance of identifying um, not only the medicine wheel perspectives. So if you can see this visual I have here, it has the medicine wheel in the middle, which focuses on the mental, spiritual, physical, and emotional part of you. But I like to take it further and incorporate the other four components of the wellness wheel, right? And so those are 8 components. So those are social, financial, environmental, and occupational. That makes up the full part of us, right? And we have our supports along the road, along the ride with us is our friends, our mentors, our family. It could be our aunties, our grandmas, our cousins. It could be someone who's on this call. It could be a professor or someone you work closely at the college. It could be any of those individuals, but this is really important to understand because as Indigenous populations, you say mental health out in the Western world, right? And it's like, oh, mental health, mental health. It's not just one component. Mental health is important because if you take a look at this definition of mental health, it's our emotional, psychological, and our social well being. And it affects how we think, feel, and act, right? And so with Indigenous populations, this part is crucial when you talk about trauma, when you talk about things that impact us daily, when you talk about microaggressions or discrimination, racism, just those really difficult things that we as a population face, right? So when that happens to us, some of us take it deep within us. Some of us are quick to brush it off and we already have that shield to be like, boom, it doesn't affect me. I'm going to walk away. But our mental health is really helps us to determine how we handle stress. How do we relate to those individuals? How do we make those healthy choices to overcome some of the difficult things that we're dealing with? It could be like I'm a mom and I'm, taking college classes and I woke up late and have to get the kids ready. I have to drop them off at school and then I got to go to class and I'm already late and I'm freaking out and I'm stressed out, right? And so how do we handle that? How do we handle that stress? And we might have tests all week, and we might be, missing our notebook, and what happens then, and how do we deal with that, right? And so we take on a lot of different things within our lives, but we also have overcome, dealing with COVID-19 and the pandemic, right? We've lost a lot of elders, we've lost loved ones, and some of us are grieving right now, and some of us are in a difficult place. Some of us have overcome that, and we're ready to go, and we're here, and we've found a way to cope with these different things. But it's really important to think about that mental health, the mental part of our well-being. And so if you take a look at that diagram again, think about that.
For sale a while back. Oh,
I'm gonna ask Lamar to be put on mute. Okay. So if you take a look at this diagram, again, looking at it as this being our whole self, and I like to use this as a way that I scan myself, right? I look at myself and I think about, this is a part of me socially. How am I doing socially? Do I need help and assistance socially? Do I feel like I'm afraid when I go out in the community? Where does that come from, and how can I overcome that, right? That's kind of what we talked about last gathering. We talked about, how do I take a self-assessment? What areas do I need to work on? So intellectually, when I go to school, what do I need to work on? Am I having trouble reading? How do I address that? Spiritually, am I conflicted because some of my family are Christian and some of my family are traditional or NIC? What does that look like? Which way am I leaning? I know we all pray to different individuals, and it's really important that we pray or meditate. I guess that's the overall word, meditate. Emotionally, am I starting to feel like I'm overwhelmed? Am I starting to feel depressed? Am I depressed? Am I anxious? Am I having thoughts that I need to talk to someone and say, you know what, I'm having these thoughts, can you help me out? It's really important to understand that even though you're having those thoughts, that it's okay to have those thoughts. And you need to go out and say, grandma or auntie or friend, hey, can you help me out with this? I don't know where to go. I don't know where to turn. And there's the hotlines, 988, there's urgent cares, and there's also the Access to Talkspace. So that's the app that the College Fund gave access to you, and it's unlimited texting through the app with a counselor if you need to ask questions or look for resources. That's a really good place to go. There is also texting 741 to the National Lifeline. That can also be called the 988 number. So make sure you're very well aware of what's happening, right? Physically, what's happening physically? Do you have aches, pains? Most of the time when you have something that jumps out at you, it's kind of like a warning to say, I got to go talk to someone about this because it's happening, right? Whether it's a traditional person or one of your loved ones, going to see a doctor or going to see a traditional practitioner that can sit down and talk to you about what's happening in your life. So take note of this. I take a screenshot. You're welcome to do that. And when I have time, I sit down and I think about this. And sometimes red flags will come up for me and saying, oh no, what's happening? I'm feeling these aches and I'm starting to experience bloating, and what's happening, and like I'm getting pains in my front area, like what is that about? I got to go see a doctor. So I make an appointment and I talk with them about it, and we do all these checkups, and Come to find out, I'm just stressed, right? So our body will soak up all of these stressors and our body will give us red flags, but it's our responsibility to know when to act and when to address them. So it's kind of a gist of what we went through last meeting. I'd like to go into some guidelines. Don't pay attention to the mentee part because I took those out. But I'd like to talk about, some of the guidelines that we should put in place when we're meeting together. What makes a safe space? I did name off one thing, and it was the Vegas rule. What's said here stays here. Does anybody else have any other rules for creating a safe space? Anybody? You can say them out loud or you can put them in chat. Confidentiality, yes. Whatever you hear, respect, trust.
Honesty.
Honesty, yeah. I'm a big fan of honesty because it goes two ways, not only being sharing the truth, but not sugarcoating it, right? Because some of the things we experience are real, and it's important to share that information. Be mindful of others' feelings and emotions, and be mindful of your own feelings and emotions. If you start to become triggered or you get emotions, you have a right to say, no, I'm done. You have a right to step out and say, I need a couple minutes, then I can come back in. And if you need help, you can always message me on here and then we can figure a way to touch base and talk through some of those emotions, okay? I'm not just gonna leave you high and dry and have you fend for yourself. Honor boundaries, those are very important.
Can I say one?
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay. I thought of compassion would be a nice one.
Mm-hmm. Awesome. Compassion. Yeah. Compassion is really important because it's not only for others, to be compassionate with others and to understand that understand where they're at and where they're going, but also have compassion for yourself. That's really important because sometimes we are too hard on ourselves, and we need to give ourselves a little bit of leeway and some time to get through something. So compassion for self and others. Acceptance. Can you give a little information about acceptance?
Just acceptance who we are and acceptance who else is like in the group with us.
Okay, awesome. Awesome. Who we are and who is with us. That's really important. Yes. Listen and replace judgment with compassion. Yes. Compassion. Listen. No judgment, right? That's a big one because we're really quick at that judgment, right? You see it all over TikTok and Facebook and Instagram, and we're easy to judge ourselves too. And it's really hard when we start to do that. We start to bring in those negative thoughts. And I know we had a discussion last meeting about negative thoughts and how do we overcome those. And it really does have a lot to do with what we're feeding our mind and our body. Are we looking at TikTok 24/7? Are we constantly in that negative mindset? Kind of try to shift over to that. We talked about journaling and we talked about why are you having those negative thoughts and writing it down. Give solutions and no letdowns, right? No letdowns, no put downs. And give solutions. Be solution focused, right? I love those words. Let's see. Okay. Any more thoughts? Did I hear someone? Did I hear somebody? No?
Can I actually expand a little bit more on the acceptance, please?
Yeah, go ahead.
So I also thought of acceptance as like you like accept that you have a problem. Like if you do it, like accept that you have a problem, accept that other people have problems, and like also accept that you're not alone in your problems.
Mhm. That's really good point. And I think we'll come to that when you'll start to see that when we start talking about some of the things we face each day, some of the difficulties, and you'll hear some similarities that you probably are dealing with or you've overcome. And so accepting that, we're all not perfect and we're all trying to go through um, our lives and we're all trying to overcome some different situations. And so that's a great one. Forward thinking, I like that one. Just having the ability to think about the future and how this will impact us. How does today impact our future? How do my life decisions impact the next generation and the generation after that? Willingness and open-mindedness. Yes, being open-minded. I think that goes into being inclusive of everyone as well. Not all of us come from the same communities and we might have different backgrounds. We might have different religions and we might have different preferences. So being okay and open-minded with what's shared here. In my life, it was forgiveness. Ooh, that's a big one. Forgiveness for yourself and others and releasing yourself from that anger and that pain. I know I was talking to someone about that today. Forgiveness is very powerful. It can release you from so many things and it'll come to you when you are really willing to step into that forgiveness mode. Thank you for sharing that. So with all those, we're going to move into the next part of this. As soon as I get my screen to work with me. Okay, there we go. So we established guidelines. Now, a little bit about you are worthy. So I want to put this as one of the guidelines. When we're doing the curriculum, it's called Gathering of Native Americans. And some of you might have had bits and pieces of that experience. And within the meetings or whatnot, we talk about, we've gone through so much, we've experienced so much as a people, and we've overcome so many things, and we are resilient, right? Our grandparents and our great grandparents, we went through so many things, and look where we are today. We're still here, right? And so saying that you are worthy, and if you could just put your hands out and practice with me and, just do a little bit of you are worthy to the person in your household or wherever you are at. And then doing a little bit to yourself. I am worthy, right? Give yourself a little bit of a fan. I am worthy. And say those words because those are really important. They're powerful words. I am worthy. And then if you could go around and do we are all worthy, right? All of us in this room, we are worthy. And I say room because we're doing it virtually, but if we were in the same room, we would really have fun with that. So whenever someone speaks or whenever someone does good or they share, we always say, you are worthy. So that way it's a form of clapping, but sometimes in certain tribes that's considered demeaning. I know in our Diné ways, we don't clap because it means bad things towards that person. So we use the you are worthy. Okay. All righty. I'm going to move into the next piece, which is what do you face each day? So I'm gonna grab my bottle of water. If you all want to take a bottle of water drink with me, because sometimes sharing, you get thirsty, you it's a lot, right? It takes a lot out of you. So if you could put in the chat, or if you want to get off mute and share some of the things that you're currently facing. It could be, maybe it's a barrier, maybe it's something that you're going through, maybe it's a situation that you're currently experiencing with college or in your life. It could be anything. It could be anything you want to share. So you can use the chat, or you can come off mute. So, oh, that's really difficult. I know when, talking to different friends and families, we experience a lot of death in our lives. And I just can't even imagine, how many funerals that a person goes through in a year. And it's not even during COVID. We experience a lot of accidents, a lot of, alcoholism, people passing from alcohol, stabbings, and, just different things like that. So I'm going to pass it on to another individual. Thank you for sharing. There's a lot of grief, like I was saying, in our communities, and there's not a lot of discussion about it. And we, some of our songs and our ceremonies and our teachings, you hear a lot about the good things, and that there's a reason for that. But there are also reasons that things have been put in place because of grief. And so I really would like to touch on grief a little bit more. We'll go around the circle still and we'll talk about things, but I would like to go back to grief and talk a little bit about that and how it impacts us. And, you said you're not healed. We're never going to be healed. I think each and every one of us are still in healing at some capacity, whether it's from substances or mental illness or grief or just different things that we're experiencing, right? So we're never going to be 100% healed. What we're going through the healing process. And so I like that you are understanding that, you're still grieving, and that grief will pop up anytime and anywhere. And so just keep that thought and we'll come back to grief, okay? And that's really true. Some of us, we deal with a lot of different things in our lives that we're currently juggling, right? We have all these different things that are happening, whether we have children and friends and school and work, and maybe you're a caretaker for your mother or your grandmother, and you just have all these things that feel so heavy, right? And so how do you face that every single day? And are you getting help for yourself? And so we'll go back to the diagram again at the end when we talk about solutions, and when we talk about grief. Okay. So Amy, go ahead and share. I know that's one of our worries, right? As Indigenous people, we have great connections to our families, to our loved ones, to our elders, to our children. And so sometimes we take time out for ourselves, or we are working on things like college. And it feels like we're taking time away from others, right? And so that can be hard to juggle. We'll go back to the discussion about this. Thank you for sharing, Amy. Gina? Great, thank you for sharing. That's really important to think about when, you take on these internships, especially in difficult, I don't want to say difficult, especially in the fields of, might be law enforcement or even medical. You're going to hear things and you're going to see things. As a social worker, I've seen tons of things that I did not want to see. And it's caused a lot of stress during my time as a social worker. But I remember somebody said boundaries, right? How do you create boundaries when you're working in these settings? When you're experiencing triggers, what do you do? So if these images are causing me to stress out. Maybe it's a short break or talking to someone, maybe it's a supervisor, um, and going through what you're experiencing because it can impact us. Secondary trauma is real, right? And so taking that time out and dumping that information out and letting it go and talking to somebody, that's kind of what I have to do when working with the Department of Child Safety, um, looking at reading cases, and I would imagine these things. And you go home with this information, and you're like, "Whoa, this is causing me too much stress. What do I do?" And so I started to set boundaries. I started to think of, you know what, this is my job. I'm going to go in. I'm going to read these. I'm not going to picture it in my mind because I can't do that. I have to read for facts, and these are facts. And what I'm doing is I'm helping individuals. And that's the way that I decompartmentalize myself away from the situation. Because if you go too much in too deep, and you're going to burn out really quickly. And so, really understanding yourself and where you stand in terms of those boundaries and creating those boundaries is really important for your career. Um, so, anybody else? I'm going to start looking at the chat. I was reading some of your responses. Sorry if I'm starting to sound like really like, that's because I'm cold. um, let's see. Let's start to read. Going back, willingness, stress. Okay, stress with school deadlines and chronic pain. Oh, that combined is hard to deal with. Chronic pain is something that I've never experienced, and so we will talk about balance and how do you do that. Thank you for sharing that, Natalie. Stress with school deadlines and chronic pain. Vic, wearing my hats, being a parent, a student, a club organizer, and a researcher. Wow, that's a lot of different hats. And I know talking with the individual that was talking about wearing multiple hats and being at work, at school, being a parent, that's a lot to juggle. Burnout. And then, like I was just talking about burnout a minute ago, understanding your triggers and your boundaries. Loss of a sibling. Ooh, I'm sorry. Grief is real, it's there. And it's really understanding how do we start to live another life without someone that we love dearly, right? I was just thinking about a loved one who passed, and yesterday was their birthday. And so it was really came to me that, how do I live my life now that this person is gone? And so really we're living another life, right? Because we have to learn how to deal with someone who's not going to be there. And so this person is my sibling as well. So thank you for sharing, Amber. Uncertainty about what to do after I graduate. Yeah, that's real. I was in the same boat when I graduated. Overworked. Yes, a lot of us are overworked, underpaid, right? Juggling the mom, work, and student life. That is very real. How do we juggle all of those? I stress about what is to come next after college. Just like Nisha said, uncertainty about what to do after graduate. The unknown is always scary. Start researching, start looking out for different things. What is your next step? And that's really what you need to ask yourself. What is my next step? What options do I have? And start jotting those down, start writing those out, because it's going to come quick. Not to scare you or anything, but just so you're ready, you have those options available. You know what you're looking at, right? Preparation is key. My condolences, Dominique, from Felicia. Schoolwork, family issues in college. Family issues are difficult. We all face family issues. I know that's a really big thing, and we love our families, but sometimes things happen and issues arise, right? Judgment, that's very real, yes. For me, losing 2 brothers in 1 month and mostly financial hardship to complete my education. Losing 2 brothers, oh my, I'm sorry for your loss, Orlando. Financial hardship is another piece that I really like to focus on because, you know, I put it in that wheel that we were talking about. Financial, people think, oh, it's just finances, right? But finances are real and they will stress you out. They will greatly impact your mental health, right? And there's a lot of shame and blame that goes along with it. And it just creates the cycle of toxicity that keeps going around in your mind, right? And so, really sitting down and starting to understand and starting to search, starting to discuss my financial hardships. Even though I don't want to look at some of my finances, I have to make myself sit down and look at my bills, or maybe I have a past due bill that I don't even want to face because I don't even want to address it, but I still have to do it, right? It might be weeks, it might be a month, you know, it's real. It's, you know, we all face that. So really sitting down and looking at what are your options? What can I do about this? What, before it becomes too much on your mental health. Let's see, balancing work, home, and school, like the others we're talking about. But what is that balance? An individual wants to put prayers to all who've lost loved ones. Being isolated from my Native community because I attend a predominantly white university. And we talked about that, I believe, last semester. What can you do if you are away from your community and you don't have access to the indigenous population, right? What do you do? Is there a group on campus that you could, you know, meet with once a month or quarterly, that are not quarterly, maybe once a month since you're in the semester? Sorry, I'm thinking about outside of college. Is there some place that you can go to, that like an Indian Health Center, or what is the nearest place? You know, start thinking about that. Two other individuals are going through the same thing. Someone's said, I feel this is hard and hope you can find a surrogate community. And another person said, same, the first semester was pretty brutal for me because I graduated from a TCU and now I'm in a mainstream. That changed, the culture shock, the missing of home, feeling that homesick feeling. Oh, that's tough. So what can you do? She said, find a surrogate community or maybe a surrogate family. That's a good idea. Prayers and lots of love to you all who are dealing with heaviness. My problem seems so trivial compared to some of you. My heart goes out to you. I can't even imagine having to deal with some of the problems and still having to function as a student, employee, dad, or whatever. Prayers for you all. So many professors demand 100% attendance, but like, if I have COVID, what do you want me to do? Come in and get everyone else sick. And that's how I got sick. Contagious people coming to class. And, you know, if that's still happening, you know, you can still practice the safe distancing. You can still, you know, put on your mask and bring your, you know, washing your hands really good and not touching a lot of different things. I know it's really hard. And I know a lot of people have gone away from, you know, a lot of these different things, but if you want to practice that, that's okay. I mean, that's totally 100% fine. But that's a really difficult place to be when, you know, the professors are constantly demanding that you be in class. So I'm having a very big problem. I've always excelled in school, especially in math. I never ever had to study, and I'm in my junior year now, and I'm flunking calculus and analytical geometry. I'm devastated. If I'm not able to figure this stuff out and pass this class, I will ruin everything. I will lose all of my scholarships. I will be ineligible for sports, which I complete in 2. And I will probably do my internship that I've set up, one for the summer in New York City and a hybrid one for the fall. Wow, okay. And someone said, I'm sorry, friend. I hope everything works out for you. We'll talk about this one. We'll sit and talk about this one for a minute. So yeah, that burnout, like having those boundaries, knowing when to say no, right? I know a lot of us, we're focusing on our career, right? We're focusing on our college, our education. And so we're each trying to obtain something, whether it's a bachelor's degree, an AA, a master's degree, a doctorate. But it's really important, like Jessica was saying, that you understand when enough is enough, right? How much of your cup is full? Is it overflowing because there's so much that you're taking on? I remember a point in my career where, you know, I was saying yes to all these different things, whether it was presentations or conference presentations and board members, and you know, leading these different groups and leading these different coalitions, and doing my job and mentoring, along with mentoring volunteers, and along with trying to get my team in shape, which was a team of 15, right? And so like, how much is enough before you start to burn out? So maybe it's saying, I don't want to do my internship and I'm going to put that off until next year or another semester. Is it, you know, some of us are very prideful, and we don't want to say no. We don't want to say we can't do this, right? Because we can do it. Is it putting aside that pride and saying, you know what, I think I need to do A, B, and C, right? I know I struggled with that a lot, and my pride got the best of me, and I had to step back and say, okay, I'm not going to do this. It's okay that I'm not where I want to be. It's okay. But what's most important is my mental health and how I'm feeling right now, because once you get stressed out, you start to feel those stressors throughout your life, right? Going back to that diagram, you start to feel all of those stressors come at you, and you start to become unhealthy in all of these different areas. It starts to impact you physically. You might start having gastro pains, and you know, your stomach's not doing well. You might start feeling anxiety or depression. You might start feeling financial hardships, or all these different things that are within this circle that we talked about earlier. So it is about taking those assessments. Are my boundaries too wide? Do I need to pull them in a little bit and say, you know what, I can't do this, I can't do that? Is it really focusing on your studies a little bit more and sitting down and creating a timeline of your day and saying, I'm going to study and I don't have time for, I don't know what else is in your life, but you know, I'm just making things up. I'm not saying this is what you do. I don't have time for, you know, going out to play ball with my friends because I need to study. I need to focus at least 4 hours on studying every single day in order to get my grade up. What does that look like? So that's really important to start to create those boundaries. Again, perhaps sitting down and talking with an advisor. Maybe this path is, maybe it's something else is awaiting for you to find that path, you know? Maybe this isn't the path that you should be in. Maybe it's really sitting down and talking to somebody else who's not your instructor. Maybe it's finding another instructor. I know it puts a dent in your plans in terms of your college career, in terms of graduation date, in terms of getting those good grades, but maybe it's coming and sitting down with an advisor and talking about what are your choices, what are your options, because I know it can be a lot sitting down and you're not progressing, you're not achieving what you want to achieve, and so sitting down and talking with an advisor will really help, I think. And I know it's really difficult. I know what you're going through, and I've been there. I in my career, my college career, and I think a lot of you have gone through this too, is, I was a working mom. I was a single mom, and I had my oldest daughter. She was about 6 months at the time, and I went to school, and I was like, I'm at a university, I could do it. I'm good, and what I was telling myself was, I need to make a better life for my child, right? And so I went to school and I tried my hardest and I tried my hardest. First semester went good. Second semester, I got straight Fs. Third semester, I got straight Fs. And that's when I said to myself, what am I doing and why am I here? And I said, you know what? I'm not progressing. I need to take a year off. And I went to work, right? And during that time, I was at work. All I could think about was, how can I make my life better for myself and my child? How can I make these changes? And I was just going to work and work and work, and I was like, this job ain't paying me nothing, and I'm tired of dealing with these people. And I was working at Target, so it was a lot to deal with customers and be nice every day and put a smile on your face when everyone was coming in with bad attitudes and accusing you of this and that. And so after that happened, I told myself, you know what, I'm going to do everything I can in my time at college when I'm going to get back in there. So I had to go back to community college, and I had to take 2 semesters, and I had to get straight A's, and I had to pay my own way in order to get back into university, right? So I did that. And I was like, man, okay, now that I got it, I'm going to go back to university. I'm going to finish strong. I'm going to find my degree path. And that's when I went back and I found social work and I finished. And so is it taking that step back and really asking yourself, what am I doing? Where am I going? Right? So, okay, let's read some more. Let's see. I can relate to the problem for the situation. I wasn't passing in my internships during my clinicals. The best thing I can say is reach out to the program and let them know you need help. Yes, communication is key. And then someone provided YouTube channel. Edwin Herman has all the Calc 1 on his profile, and it helped me. Now I'm in Calculus 3 and still going back to the videos. Awesome. Reaching out to people, letting them know you're struggling. Yes. And I like to identify what creates my struggles. Always known it's okay to fail and pick yourself back up. Mental wellness for self is always important. Know your limits and ask for help. As Jade stated, communicate with your program advisors and ensure they are aware of your struggles. And please don't quit. I took calculus 4 times and I finally passed last fall. I cried in each homework, each problem. I was a tutor room all the time. You got this. Yes. I think I failed algebra 4 times. So when I finally got to college and I took it, I got an A because I finally got it. That's what I was just going to type. And I know this is a sensitive topic, but maybe Creator or whoever you pray to, Creator might be telling you something you're not realizing. I've been there so many times. I know your struggles. You're not alone. It's okay to cry and feel your emotions, but you can't stay there. I don't want to come off as lecturing, but this is my story. I failed the nursing program in my undergrad and moved to dietetics. And I worked so hard for 6 years, but I was so burnt out. And there you go, another story to assist you in what you're experiencing. Perhaps talking to another professor, maybe someone you trust at the university, and telling them your story if nobody else is listening. You can also put in a grievance and state that people are not listening to you and not taking you seriously. Being a mother makes you push for a higher bar to reach for your children. Yes. And the head of the department, yes. Go to someone who will listen to you and just keep trying. I know it's hard, and especially if you're, the only Indigenous person around, it's really difficult to get your voice heard. And so I say continue knocking on those doors, continuing sending those emails, continue until you're heard. Okay, let's go to the next item. So, how do you cope? How do you cope with all of these difficult things that we face each day, right? Being Indigenous and, hearing the stories of our ancestors and how they've gone through boarding school and, some were taken advantage of and, going through assimilation and having our culture constantly being taken from us, I guess you could say, and constantly having to prove ourselves of that we're real people and that our traditions and our culture is important, right? I think that's really plays into what we're dealing with today, because our culture and our traditional practices, they were there for a reason, and they would lift us up when we were having bad times, right? And so going back to this wheel, and it's sacred to a lot of us. We use a lot of circles in our traditional teachings, right? Being Diné, we have our own medicine wheel, we have our own directions that we pray to, and what their meanings are and what our animal protectors are. And so when I'm having a difficult time, that's who I turn to. I'm here in Flagstaff, Arizona, so our mountain here, San Francisco Peaks, Dogo Asleep. Every time I go out to take a walk, I pray to our mountain. I ask for strength. I ask for guidance in my life, and that's when I can really focus and I can think about some of the things that I'm going through. And so, what is some of the things that you use to cope? What do you turn to? And I remember seeing someone saying prayer, and going back to what Gerald said about, self-work, taking the time to start to love yourself. What does that look like? We don't talk about this, right? We're not, mom doesn't talk to us about, loving yourself, dad, grandparents. And when I was growing up, they didn't talk to me about that, but it was shown in ceremony. It was talked about in our prayers and our songs, and really understanding that, you need to start to love yourself before you can love others, right? It's a real thing. And so how do you do that? And really looking at the wheel and taking that self-assessment. That's why I said take that self-assessment, because you can start to see some of the areas that you need to improve in. Write this down and take an inventory of yourself. Do that tonight. Write down the areas you need to work on. Some of your finances, write it down. Some of the physical part of you, they say take 30 minutes each day to participate in exercise. Are you doing that? I try to do it. It's hard to take that time out every single day, right? But it could be anything. Last night, I went to the mall and my daughters jumped on those little bikes at the mall, and I walked behind them for like 30 minutes straight. And that was my exercise, because it was raining outside and there's snow. It's getting down in your living room floor or wherever you have some space and doing some crunches or some push-ups for 30 minutes. It's that easy. And so really putting yourself in the forefront, looking at yourself as I am worthy. I am able to create a timeline of my day. I'm able to section out my day and say, I'm going to get up at 7 a.m. I'm going to drink some water. I'm going to do my exercise. I'm going to take a shower. I'm going to dress nice. I'm going to smell great. I'm going to fix my hair a certain way. And yeah, I'm going to go out there and I'm going to go straight to my professor or my advisor. I'm going to talk to them and I'm going to ask them, I'm struggling. I need your help. Or wherever you may go to challenge someone, because you should be challenging people, right? That's good. That's
Mhm.
really good. And even if it's not something strenuous, even stretching, going to YouTube and Google, put in the search like stretches, morning stretches. You can usually find some really good stretches. I did these like neck, back, upper back stretches, and I found a video on that because this is where I hold my stress. And really understanding your body is really learning to love yourself, because understanding where you hold your stress in your body, that's really important. I hold my stress in my shoulders, like right here in my neck area. And so I really try to stretch that out because it starts to get hard. Like you could physically feel where you carry that stress. Is it in your stomach? You know, and really starting to understand that, what is good for you and what is not good for you. Nutrition. I know it's really hard for some of us to get to nutritious food. Um, really starting to understand where you carry some of these things and really understanding stress. Chronic stress can really, really damage you physically, not just mentally. It could cause people to have start to have diabetes. It could cause people to have substance abuse issues. It could cause people to have depression and, God forbid, suicidal thoughts. And that's the reason why I was sharing, if you have a situation, if you really are in need of help, please reach out to somebody who you trust, who you can go to get you help. Okay. And it's really important that we start to understand that we are worthy, that we're able to love ourselves, right? Because we don't want that to continue throughout the generations after us. And so now's the time to start making those changes. So take that not financial, take that inventory of yourself. And that will really start to seep into the other areas of your life. And thinking about grief, grief is an interesting area because it doesn't flow in a logical way, right? You have those stages of grief that they talk about, and it's not like you're going to go through one and then you're going to go through the other and then you'll be done, right? Nope. Grief, I think, is an extension of love, right? We had love for the individuals that were grieving, and that love is just continuing. And so you're going to have to learn how to cope with that. And so how do you cope with that? How do you cope with the grief and loss of someone or something? So really asking yourself, how do I start to talk about this person? How do I start to deal with some of these things that I'm facing? We talked about the various losses that we've had. Somebody talked about, their aunt was murdered, their grandmother passed, friend overdose. So that's a lot of loss that we were talking about today. And so how do you cope with that? And I know it's a difficult thing to talk about. I think next session, I really want to focus a lot more on grief and loss and talk about how it impacts us and, what are some things that we can use for coping. So I really thank you for sharing all that information. And I really thank you for feeling vulnerable in sharing. And I encourage each and every one of you to start to look at yourself, start to understand who you are as an individual, because we are resilient individuals, right? We've overcome so much, and now is not the time to stop. You have so much to live in your life. And right now, what you're doing is you're going to college, right? So you're making a better life for yourself and your family and the future generations. That's what you're doing. And so I really want to put that back on you and saying that you are resilient. You just got to bounce back. And how do you do that? Thank you for sharing. Yeah, we all don't read the same. That's really a good point. And finding that way to cope, and that yours was prayer, which is really great. And who do you talk to? Who do you pray to? Some of us don't know who to pray to. So really starting to ask yourself, what have you been taught, or who do you go to, or where do I go? Is it a church? Is it traditional place? Is it to the land, earth, animals, or plants? Do you use
I
plants
pray to
pray?
water.
Yeah.
Water
Pray to
helps a
water.
lot.
Water helps a lot. And water is a very important medicine that we should consider, because water is so powerful. And that's one thing that I, whenever I visit streams, or when I'm out adventuring, like I always go to water, because it's a sense of comfort for me. And I always ask for strength when I go to water, but I always like to unload what is on my, stressors, or if it's a loss, I go to water as well. But I also go to our mountains, using the cedar or sage to help pray. And you might have your own specific types of prayers, or you might use feathers, or you might use rocks, finding that. And so it's really important to go back to those. And if you need some suggestions, or if you need to go ask some elders, or maybe your parents or aunties or uncles, that's a really good place to go. So I really thank you for sharing that. And so who are you, and what do you carry with you? I always like to say that you were prayed here for a reason, right? That each and every one of us were in the wombs of our grandmothers, right? And so I think about my grandmother, and I think about my grandmother, and we are a matriarchal society. And so our women were constantly praying, and they're constantly praying for their families and their offspring. And so what are the prayers that are said for you when you were a baby, when you were, a young child? There was a lot of prayers that were said for you. So it's really important that you take that into consideration and carry on those prayers and carry on that mindfulness. So I'll leave you with that. And I want to do one last exercise before we leave. And I'm going to take myself off of video just to do this, because I like to close my eyes and I don't want you looking at me. I'm just kidding. Okay, so I want you to close your eyes, and if you could sit down. If you're sitting on the floor, that's fine. If you're sitting on a chair, wherever you're sitting, just close your eyes and put your hands on top of your knees. Open up your palms. Try to put your feet on the ground and push your feet against the ground, okay? And try to feel the vibrations of the earth. And in the palm of your hands, try to feel the vibrations of the air. And in your ears, try to feel the vibrations or the sounds of the air, or anything around you. Take all of those sounds and feelings in. Okay? And listen to your breath. Take a deep breath in and a deep breath out. Identify those areas where you hold that stress in. Remember, I was talking about I hold my stress in my shoulders, right? But I want you to identify where is that it clenching up. Take a deep breath in and a deep breath out. Try to release those muscles a little bit. Now I want to invite in a hummingbird. So I want you to place your hummingbird right in front of your face, like you're staring right at the hummingbird. And its little wings are fluttering and fluttering, and you can hear him or her. But I want you to have the hummingbird go all the way down to your feet. And I want you to take a deep breath in and take a deep breath out of your feet and release any negative energies. Now I want you to take a deep breath in and release it. Now bring the hummingbird up to your knees. And I want you to think about anything that's bothering you. I want you to release it through your knees now, right? You're going to take a deep breath in. Take a deep breath out of your knees. All the negatives. Now we had some hard conversations. We talked about grief. We talked about boundaries. We talked about difficult things in our lives. We talked about school and some of the difficult things that we faced. And I want you to bring the hummingbird up to your stomach, your belly button area. And I want you to take a deep breath in. Take a deep breath out of your belly button. Now bring the hummingbird up to your chest. And take a deep breath in and release all the negatives through your chest. Now I want you to think about all the good that we talked about, all the solutions, all the good tips we talked about, and bring the hummingbird up to your face. And I want you to accept all the good prayers and all the good thoughts and all the goods that in your life. And I want you to take a deep breath and breathe all of that positive in and release. And release throughout your whole body and relax all your muscles and sit back. And I'm going to do one more thing. I don't know who you prayed to, but I'm just going to do a quick mindfulness and good intentions before we depart because of all of the discussion we have today. And I really thank each and every one of you for being here. And I really, truly do believe in prayer. And I truly believe that we were prayed in the exact place that we are in. I know we experience hard times and we experience difficult situations, and we might be experiencing the loss and grief of our family or friends. But I really would like to call upon the four directions. We call upon the east, the south, the west, and the north. And we call to the skies and to Mother Earth and where we are sitting currently. And if we were in a circle, I like to imagine that each one of us is connected in this circle. And I'd like to say that, our plants and our animals, they're there for us for guidance, for protection, our rocks, our water, our fire, and our relatives, each and every one of us. And I like to say that, we ask for strength, we ask for guidance in this time of difficulty and this time of heartache, that each and every one of us will have strength and will have the ability to move forward in whatever manner that we might be experiencing today or this week. And I thank you for each and every one of you for being here. And I thank you for taking the time out. And I especially like to pray for those who are experiencing hard times, who are maybe dealing with substances or suicidal thoughts or ideations, who might be incarcerated or who might be experiencing homelessness. But we come to you today and we ask for support and guidance in our lives, that we overcome these hardships, that we're able to move forward, that we're able to be successful in our lives, that we're able to be successful in with our families, and we're able to communicate and have good things and think good ways and think positive. And with that, I say amen, Ashiya, great creator. So I will leave you with that, and thank you for being here, and I really appreciate each and every one of you. So next week, I would like to go a little bit more into grief and loss. And so if that's something that you're interested, not next week, the next session, and I'll hand it over to Loyola to share some information about the next session.
Thank you so much for the words, for the thoughts, for being present, and just being here for each other. I think that's one of the greatest strengths that we can offer each other, is a bit of ourselves. And y'all are so strong and you're so smart, and I hope you realize that and take heart in that, you know, strength in that. You're all very beautiful people. So thank you so much for sharing yourselves during this session. So we are going to conclude with the event evaluation. This is to basically track attendance, and then also to hear from you on feedback. We took a lot of what we learned from y'all last semester and are implementing it this semester. So we hope you are noticing the changes, and we hope to improve and make those adjustments. So please feel free to fill out the event evaluation. If your scholarship does require a wellness and cultural, what is it called? Sorry, mental health and cultural wellness event. This does count and qualify. So you have completed that requirement. If you fill out the event evaluation there, we can keep track of that. The next session will be taking place on Thursday, April 6th. So definitely look out for the registration. You know, I'm just going to pop that in the chat real quick because we're here anyway. Let me get that posted. Let's see. Because y'all are so busy. Next session, registration. There we go. Go ahead and sign up now, and you'll be sent reminders. That way you know to keep it in your calendar as well as you journey forward. So yes, thank you all so much for your time, for your efforts, and for your energy. Go forth, be the strong, independent person you are. We really appreciate you having you here. Have a good evening, everyone. Take care.